Well, hello there, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Receivables Info webinar. Today, I want to address a topic that is plaguing, I would say, the entire debt collection industry, and that's talking about hiring, recruitment, and retention in 2025. Not an easy task to overcome, but the gentlemen that I have with me today have been addressing that challenge for quite some time and sharing with me some of the insights that they've learned through the process. So I'm really excited to have them here today. I've got Mr. Ryan Kazmark and Sean Welch, both with P&B Capital Group. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Pretty good, Adam. How are you?
I really do appreciate you guys coming on. Ryan, I know you've been on a few different things. Sean, this might even be the first time that we've actually had an opportunity to record together. So I appreciate you joining today as well, because I know that this is something that you've been actively engaged in for quite some time, working on that hiring process. But for anyone who has not been as lucky as me to get to know you guys through the years, starting with you, Ryan, maybe you could tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today.
Sure. That's a long one. We
That's good.
incorporated in
Personal stories.
2004. You want me to think back 21 years? Sure. I come from the banking environment. I have an undergraduate finance degree from Nazareth. Sean and I have been friends for 25 years. We decided to start this company. I had the background from the bank in collections, particularly in acquiring receivables. And so we incorporated in 2004. Generally, I'll do it real fast here. We started buying, and then we also had a servicer. And things changed economically after 2008, 2009. As you know, we got upside down with a number of portfolios. We had to dig out like everyone else did. We stopped buying for a while, and then we started buying again. We have another entity in 2014. Our main collection entity, P&B Capital Group, it's still in business now, 21 years, is the master servicer for that entity. So, probably 70% of our inventory comes from our own acquisition company. The other 30% is our client mix. So, 20 years of fighting wars and staying alive, and we've moved to 4 different offices. Now we own the building we're in. We purchased it in 2015, gutted it, renovated it, made it exactly the way we wanted from a security standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint for the employees, all those things, so everyone's as happy as possible. And, a lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes, but you learn along the way, and we have a pretty good, well-oiled machine now.
I would think over 21 years, you guys have learned an awful lot about how to build a team and engage that team and create an environment that creates a positive impact. And so by bringing together these people, providing those job opportunities in the marketplace, I mean, there's so many great things that come along with that. And we're going to dig into that a lot deeper here today. Sean, I know that you come along a similar story. Anything that you want to add for kind of how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Well, Ryan brought a business plan to me in 2004. We'd been friends for a while before that. I came from commercial real estate. As he was running operations when we first started, I took over sort of the engine room, so to speak, compliance, HR, payment processing, and legal, and been doing so for 20 years now.
Excellent. So, I mean, look, there's no better way to learn than to be an operator, to actually get your hands in there, do the things. And so I really do appreciate you gentlemen joining me today for this discussion, because this is something that everybody is facing right now, and it's not getting any easier anytime soon. So in terms of our agenda for today, just some of the things that I wanted to cover was talk about kind of how the industry landscape has changed over the last couple of years and what that hiring has looked like. 2019 to 2024, I feel like I'm on a different planet. Never mind, right? Like a different industry. It quite literally feels like a different planet. The challenges that we're facing from a recruiting standpoint and how you've been able to leverage technology to improve that recruitment and retention. Because recruiting is great and we can get people in, but if we can't keep them, it's even harder. And it's from a collection agency environment, it's not always the easiest job out there. And it's, it creates some challenges in terms of getting people to really understand the level of opportunity that truly exists within our industry, even when you're coming from the ground up. So many of the CEOs around this industry, got their start on the phones and really have worked their way up. I find that to be an inspiring story, and then we'll take some time to talk about Q&A. But our objective here is really understanding the landscape of recruitment and retention in this debt collection. And what I've learned from the 2024, we provide a white paper for this presentation. No, I don't have a white paper for it, but I'll have a deck and a repost of it. So for this one, when we talk about what's going on in 2025, if you look at the TransUnion debt collection industry report, we talk about how there's an increase in the volume of accounts and there's a decrease in the collectability of those accounts. And when you're dealing with that, you're ultimately looking at three options for debt collection companies to grow. They can hire more people. 88% are having trouble hiring. 81% are having trouble retaining the people that they are hiring. So this isn't a P&B capital problem. This is an industry problem, right? From there, we can look at BPO services and hiring in new geographic locations or opening offices in different locations, or we can start moving into self-service technology and providing the emails, text messages, and the frictionless payment portals that enable consumers to self-serve. Now, I know from your perspective, you've kind of approached all three of those, but help me understand a little bit more about how the dynamic of recruitment and retention has changed in the last 5 years.
You want to take that, Ryan?
Yeah, all you, my friend. I'll be your wingman. You start, and I'll chime in.
Well, our biggest issue is being in the state of New York. There's 11 states in the country in which minimum wage is still $7.25. I believe when Ryan and I started, it was approximately $9. So we always hired $2 to $3 over minimum wage, and with the bonus incentives and whatnot. Over the last few years in New York, we're currently at $15.50. And so we have to hire at 16 or 17 an hour just to start. So that's created a huge issue because our clients can place anywhere in the country. So we're at an extreme disadvantage for having these high hourlies we have to pay, on par with Illinois, California, Arizona, Rhode Island, and DC is actually $17.50 at this point. So we've had to get very innovative in our bonus structure, providing a ramp up, a lot of that being based on compliance and adherence to our company standards. We've sort of moved away from hiring people from scratch, teaching them how to do collections, and going that route. We're hiring veterans at this point, and we're having a lot more luck at that point.
It seems like the potential employee pool, right, or the labor pool that's available in the local areas are, minimum wage is one piece of the puzzle, but even in driving that, it's become a more competitive market for jobs. So if McDonald's is paying $17, $18 an hour,
And
it creates new challenges, right? And that's not for a management position. I honestly don't understand how organizations are still maintaining profitability, because we've had all of this fee compression. So we're having to do more with less, and now we're having the struggle of adding the people on top of that. So from your perspective, what kinds of things have you seen that are adding to the, let's say, the level of challenges? What alternatives does this labor pool have that's kind of increasing, let's say, the challenge level?
Want me to take that one?
Sure.
All right. So, we traditionally in the last 5-6 years, and even through COVID, our focus has been on hiring inexperienced labor and training them. We had a great 2-part training program. We have a classroom, 8 seats, overhead screen, 8 stations. You had a trainer right behind them, 2 weeks in processing, paperwork, New York State, sex harassment training, all the videos, right? FTCPA test, got to score 90 or better. And then we're right on the phone learning the technology that we deploy, the telephony, the dialer, text messaging, everything. They need to understand all that. Payment processing system's pretty sophisticated these days. That's a whole day. Then we move them up to an advanced training quadrant on the floor. We had a whole quad set up, 12 seats, an advanced trainer. And then, almost 1 out of every 3 calls are monitored, and the person's right behind them to help take over the call if they need to, coach them through the call. And that's usually a 60-day process, sometimes 90. And so when you elongate the training, your budget, right, for training is massive. And so you're covering these payrolls, and it's taking longer and longer for these people to ramp up until they can cover their seat costs. And so what's happened is it got to the point where it's up to almost 4 or 5 months. And so along that way, that would be fine if you knew, so you had a class of 7 and all 7 were going to make it. I would definitely make that investment. But what's happening is maybe 1 out of 7 would make it. 6 would fall at about the 60 to 120 day mark. So what happens then is all of that payroll, all of that training, all that's out the door. It's a massive, it probably is our second biggest expense after the payroll for the whole company. It's that right under it. It's huge. It became larger and larger and larger. It got to the point where right now it became undoable. And so we had to go away from inexperienced labor. Now, it doesn't mean we stopped hiring it. We just reduced that down to about 20%, 80%. We revitalized our employee referral program. We're paying the highest referral bonuses we've ever paid. And the dividends are paying off. We have hired a veteran workforce. There's some bad habits we had to break. We're successful in doing that, but we have, middle-aged people with a great work ethic that have all of the necessary tools already. They already have a proven track record of success in their previous agencies, which they're able to show us in the hiring process. So we've been relatively successful with that over the last 3 to 4 months. And so we're going to continue with that. Eventually, we just brought on a brand new phone system, literally been building it from scratch. Open backend architecture, no limitations like legacy systems would impose on us. Just started on Monday. Finally went live. There's some hiccups and some things we got to work through, but
sure.
What this will enable us to do is to bring on an offshore workforce. Sean knows about this. We've been talking about it for quite some time. We have some people we've been talking to. I should talk to you about that in our last phone call. That's where we're pushing. We already have an omni-channel system. We are pushing. We're going to be adding in chatbots and AI. So to do that, we're going to have to upgrade our software because we'll need real-time data so people can access their balance and different things and see that and make that decision on the fly. We want them to make that impulse decision to smash the Google Pay button, the Apple Pay, and make that payment right on their phone. That's where we're going this year. That's where you have to go. I feel like if you don't get to that point in the next 5 years, you're going to be out of business. Maybe not down to Texas where the federal minimum wage is $7.50. Go to Texas, but up here, like Sean was saying, our governor added a $2 increase for any worker that's fast food. So it's $2 over the minimum wage if you're considered fast food. And so everyone's $17.50. You drive by Tim Hortons, it's I see signs for $18.50 hiring, basic workers.
What a great way to drive the kiosk industry.
Yeah. Well,
what a great way to drive the kiosk industry.
McDonald's, you can't even order from a live person where we are. You got to go to the touchscreen kiosk and order or do it on the app. There's no one to talk to, and I understand why they're doing that because they don't.
What option do they have?
Exactly.
Well, it's interesting because as I kicked this off and we talked about the TransUnion report and we said, okay, there's 3 things that we got to do. It sounds like you guys are literally doing all 3 simultaneously. You're focusing on that internal growth. How do I put butts in seats here in my local geographic location where I can grow that team? You're looking at that offshoring capabilities and putting the technical infrastructure in place to enable that to happen going forward. And I definitely understand what those bridges look like. And at the same time, looking at the artificial intelligence, the self-service technology, right? How do I provide that consumer with a better experience across the board? And I think it sounds like you guys are hitting all 3 items that are going to be necessary for success going forward.
Yeah, the key there is, we've been doing this a long time. And if you make a rash decision and jump into one software quickly because you're impatient, very oftentimes it's the wrong decision. And so we're very patient. And we're looking through. We're even not even opposed to building our own. Sean and I are part owners of a software development company, and it's something we've been discussing. Maybe we should just build our own. Maybe we should use someone else's. We're still determining what direction we're going to go, and we're not in some panic to where we need it tomorrow. And so we're going to take our time throughout the year and find that perfect solution that fits us, from a cost perspective and also from an effectiveness perspective. We just don't know where that is yet, but we're going to get there. I feel like the offshore thing is something we're going to push harder and faster, get that rolling. The chatbot will be phase 2. So we're going to get there. It's this year, so, in the acquisitions company, we talked earlier, we're going through a software transition there that has been hellacious. I think they all are, right?
Painful. I think every single system conversion of debt collection software that's ever been done has been painful.
It is unbelievably difficult. So still working through that. That's slowing us down a little bit over here, but once we're through that, we're going to be full speed ahead with all these other things we're trying to bring on board. So this year, I feel like 2026 is going to be bright. We're just going to dig through this year. We're going to keep adding veteran employees to the best of our ability. And I think in the future, the way we're going to move forward is have a veteran workforce that's locally here in New York, and the vast majority of our employees will be offshore, in probably a ratio of 1 to 5, right? And then we'll be deploying chatbots, and then we'll be taking on more volume. This will enable us to take lower balance volume, because right now, small balances don't work in our model, and so we have to turn those clients away. Once we have that rolling, I can accept everything. Won't matter how I can go down to a $5 balance. Can't do that right now. So there's a whole nother market there that we're missing, that we'd like to bring in under our umbrellas and service. So a lot of things. We know where we need to go. We know what we need to do to get there. We just have to be patient and work through it.
So one of the things that you had talked about was revitalizing the referral program. And I think we have it later, but we just got a question about it. So maybe we can address that now. How have you looked at the referral world, right? As you've tried to identify how do I get to veterans, right, within a local jurisdiction? What are some of the things that you've learned through the process of refining your referral program?
What, can I take this?
Yeah, take it. All you.
What we used to do is just give a dollar amount to an employee that recommended somebody else. If they showed up for 2 to 3 days in training, we wouldn't give them anything. They had to get through their ramp up bonus and be a viable collector. So that put everything out by 3 months. So what we've been doing lately is we're getting them the referral bonuses as they come. If they come to work for 2 days, we have them. But with the veteran workforce, they're only recommending their friends and family to come over if they're successful. So they're not even recommending them until they're hitting bonus in 2 to 3 months. And we've had a much bigger success rate with that.
That's very interesting, right? Being able to engage them a little bit earlier in the process, let them feel that benefit. Have you found any methodologies for getting that referrer to be a motivating factor for a new employee? Like, is there anything in your program that's kind of driving that? Right? I don't want to say making one person responsible for the other, but or have you found ways to motivate those that have been referred using the referrer?
Well, I mean, there's other than the money, right?
And the camaraderie that comes with it, right? Like now their friend is there, they're sharing lunches. There's more to it, but I was just curious.
The office culture has completely changed with the veteran workforce. These are middle-aged people, better work ethic, and they're money motivated. They're driven. We don't have to do a lot of different contests and things to get people motivated. They just want to make that big bonus, and it's great. It reminds me of 2010, 7, 8, 9, and 10, where everyone just wanted to work their butt off for their big bonus. And we feel like we kind of got that back again. And there's a great vibe on the floor. We had a Christmas party this year, probably one of the liveliest, most upbeat Christmas parties we've had in many years. What would you say, Sean? I mean, just a great, everyone's just so happy to be here, and they love the culture and they like the company. A lot of them came from other companies that didn't treat them well. The bonuses were less lucrative, and there were working accounts that were more difficult, more restrictions. We've kind of have a nice happy medium on not too much restriction. Of course, you have to have some, but we're not too overbearing. We got rid of nights That's a huge deterrent for a veteran workforce. No one wants to work nights, and nights aren't productive anymore. We talked about that in previous webinars.
Yeah.
They're just not productive anymore. Weekends, of course, not productive anymore. So they get that 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, right? I think a lot of that goes. That's really all it is. They see their friends and family making the larger bonuses, larger than most of the collectors in the area, and they're sending screenshots of these bonuses to prove. I think that's a lot of it. And they say, "Wow, look at that!" Jay got a $4,500 bonus check this month. Holy crap, that's 3 times larger than mine, and I'm busting my butt over here. I should just give it a shot over there. And that's really all it's been. It's really not that complex. We didn't want to pay out as much for this referral program. That's the thing. We finally ponied up more.
Yeah.
And that's really been the difference.
Well, it's hard to send money down the pit, right? And I know that you tried a lot of different things that didn't work too as you were going through the process of building a referral program. And so I know the audience always is interested in learning from your successes, but let's try and learn from, what didn't work as well. Were there things that you tried in your referral program that just wasn't a good fit, whether it be for the location, the people, the whatever, but are there some things that you tried that just didn't work out?
Like Sean said, the delayed payout. We
Delayed
didn't
payout.
know that was a big stopping point.
Mhm.
For years for us to figure that out. No one wants to wait for their money.
What was the aha moment?
There really wasn't one. It's like it was trial and error. We just
Okay.
assumed, Sean said, let's just pay them out early. If we get a bad employer or two that we have to dump, then we'll deal with it. We'll shift gears. Let's just see what happens. And so, we haven't had so far. Every referral has ramped up beautifully, melded right into the company culture. They're following company policy. I just think it comes down to, and I don't want to trash younger generations, and that's not what I'm trying to do, but work ethic in the younger generations, let's face it, it's just not there.
It's not the same.
In middle-aged people, it's night and day difference in work ethic, and that's really been the difference maker. I think Sean can tell you. That's really it. It's not that complex. It's a different age group of people, different experience group.
So I had two. I love
One
how
of our-
active
one of
the
our
chat is today.
failures-
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of our failures was it wasn't our failure. I think it's just the environment we're in, but we had a point collar program. So
Right.
as Ryan was talking about earlier, we had a no experience program. They got approximately 60, sometimes 90 days of training. They would become point callers, transfer it to a closer, and then they would get to listen on the call on how those veteran employees handled the call. We just ran into all sorts of issues with that, being the younger generation, not showing up to work, not applying themselves, not even wanting to get to the next level, completely satisfied with the lowest wage, not considering their bonus checks, anything like that. So we ended that program. And that's one thing I would recommend anybody out there not to try.
So I love how active the chat has been today. So thank you everybody who's watching, who's participating. I had one question come through, gentlemen. I don't know if you're going to be comfortable answering this one, and I would understand. But they were asking if you could share the dollar amount of the referral bonus program. That might be a little bit more secret sauce, but I figured I'd throw it out there because it's in the chat.
Right now, $750.
Okay.
It's no big secret there. We go up. I'd consider going up to 1,000.
Wow. Okay.
So,
but that feels like it's not too unreasonable when you consider the cost of recruiting, right? Well, how much money are you actually putting out there to run ads? Indeed ain't cheap anymore. Like used to be.
Yeah, we're still running those ads. We're still bringing those people in. We just downscaled.
Sure.
We're more choosy. We're still interviewing. We're still going through all that rigorous, but we're not trying to fill classes of 7. We're taking 1 or 2 of the best of that lot for that month. And so we're getting a better prospect, so to speak. So we haven't, completely shut that down. It's just that it hasn't been nearly as successful as a referral program as of late. And everyone's hitting seat costs within 2 to 3 months. And so Sean and I, from a risk standpoint, we have no problem throwing more money at it.
Mhm. I think it makes a lot of sense because the cost of those ads that you're running on Indeed have gone up exponentially. I can't remember if it was 23 or 24 where
Yeah.
Indeed changed their methodology from here's what it costs to run an ad to let me try and charge you per resume.
Yeah.
Personally, it was the last day I used Indeed. I no longer recruit through that methodology because it just became so wildly cost prohibitive that
Right.
it didn't make sense anymore. I would much rather pay $1,000 bonus to somebody to
Right.
bring me somebody who's got not only a pulse but a brain, because a pulse is not the requirement. Like this is a
Yeah.
more complex job than it used to be.
Yes, it is.
We had another question that came through that I'm curious to get your take on. But what do clients say about about not having evening hours? How do you handle inbound traffic after 5 p.m.?
So it's just voicemail. We have an intelligent router, and so we monitor the voicemail greetings to make sure they're all compliant. But the veterans like having the ability to get their own calls, and so the way the phone system's been built, if a call comes in through the PTSN, through a toll free or other, if the account is in their WIP, their list, whatever everyone has a different name for that, it
Mhm.
auto routes to them in a microsecond. And so no one's getting upset because someone else is working their call and screwing it up or something like that. But it also applies after hours. It goes to their voicemail. They perfect a very professional voicemail greeting. That customer leaves a voicemail for that collector, and the collector calls them back the next day. I think that from a professional standpoint, having normal business hours, I don't know what it feel like. It gives us a little higher echelon of professionalism. I feel that I get that feedback from the collectors when they talk to consumers. We have that. I think the collection agency feel people don't like that so much. They rather talk with. I'm not saying that we're not a collection agency, but a more professional company when you don't have those late night hours. The feel's different from a consumer standpoint. And I felt that I talked with some of my veterans that have managed before they were managers at NCO, very bright people. And some of them have decided they're just tired of managing and they just want to collect. They just want to go and make their bonus check and live their life. And that's great. And we have a few of these guys are really intelligent. And I've offered them management positions and they've turned it down. And I'm going to keep offering. Hopefully one of them will break. But um, they just want to make their bonus and go home. But I really, really like the feedback from these people because they're highly intelligent. They've run big agencies. Really good feedback, really good data from them. And this is what they've been telling me for a while that, we even have, certain collectors have access to email and we monitor the email to make sure it's compliant. It's a pain in the butt, but it's worth it because when we're talking with some of these larger balanced consumers, they sometimes, especially business owners, they'd rather converse via email. They don't want to talk on the phone. They just want to go back and forth on an email. That's it. And so what they'll do with the email is they'll set meetings. They'll call it a meeting. Let's set a phone meeting for this date. It's very professional. And then they get on the call. It's a meeting. It's just, I don't know. It's a
It's a
level.
different dynamic of communication.
Yeah.
Right. It's truly a different dynamic. And,
Yeah.
what you're saying, it's kind of clicking for me as you're saying it.
Yeah.
But it brings me back to, I did my MBA thesis on Douglas McGregor Theory X and Theory Y management styles, right? Some people work hard for their own self-satisfaction and others work hard enough not to get fired. And that's just the reality of the world. I will argue with anybody. I've argued with college professors and anybody else that there's really, I could put anybody that you introduce me to into one of those two buckets, right? And those that work hard for their own self-satisfaction tend to work their way up into management. And there's nothing wrong with those that just want to do the job and go home. There's a place for everybody in an organization, but being able to identify which of those attributes is driving the biggest value proposition, I think is a real opportunity for the industry to really understand that, like, sometimes it's okay, right? If somebody wants to come in, do their job and go home, there's really nothing wrong with that as long as they're producing and they're doing their job.
Right.
It's hard enough to find people to do the job. So
Yeah.
like, when we can find someone who's really, focused on it, like, I don't
Yeah.
see that as any kind of an issue. We had another question about partnering with BPOs here as well, or I'm sorry, CBOs. So community-based organizations, charities, and the like. I know you guys do a lot of community engagement, especially in your local community. So anything that you've seen from a recruiting opportunity from all of that engagement?
Not recruiting opportunity, but from like an awareness, company awareness, just getting our name out there. It helps to get the name out there, and if that does translate into recruiting, there's no way for us to measure that. I guess I
Fair.
have to assume it probably does help. I'd have no way to measure that, but definitively. But I think it helps. Sure, I think it helps, and we keep doing that. Soup kitchens. We do a lot of children's team sports, travel sports stuff. We help out the team softball, a lot of softball lately. One of our partners, coaches two highly advanced, well-coached softball teams. We do a lot of donations to those teams. There are other teams, my daughter's team, Sean's son's football. Anyone that comes with us and wants a donation for a sports team, we usually say yes. But it gets our name on. They put it on the banner, and it goes on the backstop where they play, and people see the name, and I think it helps just getting the name out there. We do hang flyers, we have the tear offs, we go to libraries, pizzerias, we hang all that. We have signs we put up, and those work. You can't completely rely on those. It's like an ancillary item. You'll get a decent employee once every 90 days, maybe from that. It's worth it just to maintain it, keep it going.
The guerrilla marketing, right? Like
Yeah.
the baseline guerrilla type marketing. Now, we've talked a little bit about the demographic shift, and I know we've kind of gone off topic for, kind of how we've managed or how we've been working through the presentation today, which is great. That's generally my favorite. What about job fairs? Have you guys engaged in any, or are those even happening in your local area?
We used to. We've had very little success rate in our market for that.
Fair.
I can't remember the last time that we received a viable employee from one of those job fairs.
From something like that. Fair enough. We also had another question here about how large is your company? How many employees do you currently have?
About 45.
Okay.
45 FTEs.
45 FTE. Okay.
Yeah.
What about hosting open hours for hiring? Is that something you guys have tried in the past? I mean, I feel like it's a little hard to get people through the door.
We had a recruiter, Sean, who I forget, that used to do that back at the old office and had some success, but we were downtown, and many people lived 2 blocks away, could walk to work. And so I think that worked for that geographic location. Now that we're out in a suburb, tried it a few times unsuccessfully, and so we dropped it. I think that if you have people that live and don't drive, obviously if you're on a bus route, that's great. We're not on one anymore. We used to be. And they live right there and you're on a bus route. I think that could work. You have to be dedicated to it and keep doing it. We had some success when we were in downtown, not so much when we're in a suburb.
Okay. Do you offer remote or hybrid positions, or is everyone in-house?
Nope.
We do not offer remote. We want everybody in the office environment here.
I know a lot of people are struggling getting their people to come back into the office. And people are claiming that these remote jobs are going to be fantastic. But I think you can see as the federal government is pulling back, a number of public organizations are starting to pull back from this hybrid environment or this remote environment. I think coming back to the office is going to be a major trend over the coming years. I think there's management issues with it. And look, there's been all kinds of technology in the debt collection industry to, let's say, improve the experience or improve the compliance related to, you got collaboration room.ai with the camera that's watching them and the facial expressions. And then you've got the call recording and monitoring and all of that. But it feels like you lose something in that environment, right? Like me sitting here in my studio by myself, like there's no motion creates emotion, and there's no motion going on in here right now to excite me. I got to feed off of the people on the screen, right? And so I see that as a little bit of a challenge from a remote standpoint. Anything in particular that kind of stopped you guys from following the fad of remote?
At first, it was a security issue in my head for compliance reasons. Everybody having access to credit card numbers, checking account numbers, whatnot. But it moved into when we went through COVID and we had our staff operating remotely, we saw a drastic drop in their collections. And it wasn't because of the paper we had or anything else. Everybody had all those checks coming in from the federal government, but people were distracted. by being at home, their dogs, their cats, their kids, everything else that's at your house, you know?
I am often distracted by the cat or somebody coming through the door. Actually installing a little light outside of my office door just to be able to let people know when I'm recording. So I definitely understand that. The distractions are real. Now, as I was prepping for this particular session and kind of, I wanted to do a little bit of homework above and beyond just what we were looking at in the debt collection industry, because I kept asking myself, is this a debt collection problem or is this a U.S. hiring problem? And from everything that I was reading in prep, this is a US problem across the board, which I think is leading a lot of organizations, including yourself, to start exploring those global opportunities to increase the size of your labor pool on a broad perspective. You mentioned eliminating and minimizing Indeed. So for me, I'm not a call center, Kay. So I'm not hiring the same type of people. I'm using LinkedIn, mostly headhunting people if I'm looking to hire at this point. But I'm a very different kind of organization than what these guys are doing. I stepped away from Indeed. My cost went from, let's call it $1,000 to run an ad to like 8,500 to review these resumes. And most of the resumes I was looking at were trash. I stopped printing them at some point because I'm like, it's not worth the ink or the paper that they're printed on. And especially when you're trying to hire, for me, it's a little bit different, right? I'm hiring for, perfect example is I was hiring for a social media manager. And let me tell you what, on Indeed, everybody who's got an Instagram account thinks that they're a social media manager, but that is an actual professional position that requires, research, data, analysis, analytics. And those are my expectations, that someone's going to come in and do their job better than I can do it myself, or it's not the right fit for my organization. And that's when we switched over to the headhunting. Now we find ourselves in this weird balance between, do I want someone with industry expertise and, and train them up on how to be a social media manager? Or do I want somebody with social media management expertise and have to train them to the debt collection industry? I don't have an answer for that. I would call that the chicken and the egg question. I've had success in both realms, but I could tell you, teaching somebody the communications aspects of the debt collection industry, not easy, right? What can you say? What can't you say? Vocabulary, terminology. There's so many rules and laws and things that need to go into play, especially if we're putting everything in writing.
But I don't believe that we're trashing Indeed. I feel that it's a great tool. We're just not doing it as aggressively and focusing more on the referral program right now.
Sure.
I still believe
that's my statement on Indeed. That's my experience. I know for you guys, it's probably a little bit different.
Funny thing about Indeed though is it's a lot of trial and error. So you want to, like you said, you're getting a lot of applicants that don't fit the mold, right? For you to consider hiring. So what do? You put qualifying questions in there for them to answer to kind of weed those out. And we found that if we have too many questions, you get no applications. So people get to that 6th or 7th question and they're like, "Oh, this is too much." They move on to the next ad. They don't want to sit there and answer questions. I don't know if it's laziness or
no, that's actually rule of thumb for online forms. So the standard rule of thumb for online forms is every field that you add, you lose 25% of your respondents.
Yeah. So we had to water it down to 3 questions. And we feel like we get just enough applicants and they're viable enough to wait, to wait, not waste time, but utilize time on an interview, right? We do mobile interviews too, if they're able to. It's funny how a lot of people are late in our area would rather come in for the interview. And so we let them do that. That's fine. They get to choose. So you can do Zoom, you can come in, but we don't want to waste our time interviewing people that we know are not going to qualify anyway. And so you try to weed those out. So we used to have 10 to 12 questions and they were good, but no one would get through. They just wouldn't make it to the end, and we just wouldn't get asked. We would trim it back to 10, and then 9, and then 8, and then 7. We had to go all the way down to 3 before we get enough applicants to
It's funny. Someone said in the chat that the sweet spot for them has been 3 to 5 questions.
I saw
that. For us, it's 3. So, make those 3 count.
Ask the right 3 questions. Now, let me ask you this, right? In 2024, over 70% of companies reported skills gaps in technology usage. So outside of the veterans that you're hiring that have seen debt collection software before and done this before, have you seen any kind of technical limitations on the applicants that are coming to the table outside of the veteran population?
Well, for the young people, believe it or not, young people are generally tech savvy, and so
That was my
they
gut
come right
reaction as
in
well,
and
but the Deloitte report
they
was kind
learn
of
our
pushing
tech
back.
just fine. They have no problems. It's that you start talking about some of the older veterans we've hired. We've had some issues with 2 that still having a hard time with some of the technology we deploy. We're still working with them. So it's more of an issue with the older veterans. Than that's one thing the younger generation is very good at is the technology.
Mhm.
No problems there. That's the one thing they're good at. Absolutely.
Have you started to leverage any technology in that recruiting, hiring, training process? Like, have you started deploying new tech or started to use any technical tools to improve or create efficiencies in those processes?
Just we create our own training manual. That's always been a pain. We used to have a printer do it. Now we have our own system that creates that and binds it. That's pretty fast and it's cheaper. That's one thing. I mean, nothing earth shattering here, but the overhead system, the PowerPoint stuff, we always try to streamline that because every hour they're in that training room not collecting is
Mhm.
a higher budget's loss. How do we make it fast as possible and then leave that training room with the most knowledge? Right. That's
Mhm.
been the toughest thing. So we're always trying to shorten it. And we've shortened it too much before and then had issues on the floor with managers saying, hey, they don't understand what they're doing. They didn't absorb this in training. And so we're like, oh, scratch our head. And okay, well, we have to, spend more time on this and that and payment processing. So we're going to have to, every time we try to shorten it, we kind of kick ourselves in the butt. Um, we kind of have it down to where we have a happy medium. It's not,
Yeah.
it's right where it needs to be. We feel like they have enough information hit the floor that they're not taxing management as much.
The
So
Peter principle,
yeah,
right? Like the law of diminishing returns. At some point, continuing to throw resources at something is going to establish a diminishing return.
yeah,
Right. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. So I think finding that perfect balance for yourself is a great way to go about it. I was curious because it feels like for your business, right? Like if I was hiring fast food workers, right? I feel like I could automate some of that, but it really does require a little bit of a personal touch from you to evaluate, right? You guys have been doing this long enough to where you can talk to somebody and generally understand what their success level is going to be in a fairly short period of time, right? It's not like you got to spend an hour with them.
right.
That's interesting. It's interesting. And I really do appreciate all of the chat today. You guys have been fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the competition for talent in the local area. We've talked about the limited applicant pool, and we've talked about the rising cost. But what other things have you seen in terms of opportunities to recruit and get some people in there? I know we talked about the incentive program, and you get what you pay for, is what it's sounding like. It's pretty straightforward that way. But has there been anything else that you guys have been doing to improve that process?
I mean, the referral program, instead of just putting a flyer out there saying that it exists, right?
Mhm.
We kind of do a little bit of a full court press. Sean and I will bring them into the conference room. Certain people that we happen to know have more referrals to be tapped and utilized that maybe holding back for some reason or whatever the case may be. And we'll have a little, 20-minute powwow in order to try to extract those names and numbers out.
Well,
That,
proactive,
yeah,
right? Communication to them that this program exists, the value that they
yeah.
can start to feel from it. I mean, that feels pretty reasonable.
Salesmanship. Hey guys, I want to pay you this money. All you have to do is give me a name and a number and get them in here. What are you waiting for? 15 minutes of selling them and usually yields some success. I have to do another one next week because we didn't get many referrals this month. And so I'm hoping to get in there. We need at least 3 per month. And then we try to get another 2 off of Indeed for a class of 5 is what we've been doing, classes of 5 per month. Our training room can handle up to 8. But we found that, just trying to get it full again, we got people that, are burning payroll, not ramping up, or they seem like they are ramping up and they're right on that cusp where they could get over the edge. You don't want to cut them because you think there's a chance they could get over, and they end up burning through 90, 120 days of payroll only to find out they'd never get over. And so, reducing that's been big. We want more referrals than we get from Indeed and Zip. And so we're going to stick with that for now. And that recipe will change, I'm sure, as the market changes. The summer is always very different. We started this in the fall, so we'll see how summer goes. But we're going to keep doing this all through spring. And if something changes in the summer, then we'll shift gears. But we're going to stick with it.
What are some of the indicators
One
that
of
you're
the things that we did in addition to that is I highly recommend changing the bonus structure on a ramp up basis, including compliance in your company policies and procedures. It's something where they're rewarded as they're working towards their commission goal, and it keeps them in-house more than less.
Have you seen any early indicators? So you bring somebody new through the door, what are some of the early indicators that this person might not be a fit or this person might be a great fit?
Showing up late to work day one.
Yeah, that's a pretty good indicator. I mean, that's sad.
Yeah. Can't pass GFT CPA exam. Can't pay attention.
I feel like that's an indictment of our school systems, but sure.
Well, there you go.
Showing up with jeans at an interview. Those type of things.
Ripped jeans and the t-shirt. Okay. I mean, granted, I am all about fintech fashion, clearly. Right. But I'm not here for a job interview. So
You're not.
I can definitely understand the difference. So we had another question come through. So you're not, so are you hiring them before the training program and hiring a select few from the training class?
So I think what they mean is, yeah, of course they're hired before the training. We have to get them in process before we begin training. But, a lot of times they'll get through the 2-week course in the classroom. And once they come out to advanced training, a lot of people can easily get through the 2-week course, right? Anyone can. You rarely identify someone that you feel like, hey, we should just cut this person now. We do sometimes, but not very often. You usually expose these problems once they're on the phone and they're in advanced training. If someone can't learn certain parts of the system or process and procedure and to keep making the same mistake over and over, it's usually an indication that they're not going to be able to assimilate to the policy and procedure. And it's just, instead of trying to, ram this square peg into the round hole, know it's not going to work. It's time to just cut them. And so we do have pretty aggressive in cutting people. In the years past, it's been one of our biggest problems. We didn't do that enough. But our managers, especially in training, are pretty good at identifying, hey, we don't think this person's going to assimilate well. And here's why. We have production meetings where part of the meeting is training. And these things are, brought up to Sean and I on a weekly basis. And we empower them to make that decision to cut right on the spot. And then they usually do that. We rarely tell them no, because they don't think they're going to assimilate. I'm not going to roll the dice and keep them on 90 more days of payroll. So,
and they're day-to-day interacting with them. I mean, there's no better way to get to know someone than to spend that much time with them, to share those experiences together. And I feel very much the same way. If I've got a leader who's telling me that this person's not going to be a good fit or is detrimental to the culture, I mean, it's like cancer. You got to cut it out and make sure that you don't spoil the rest of the culture that you spent millions building. It's not cheap to build a good culture. It's a very expensive endeavor, and not just from a payroll and a pizza party. Like, it's just expensive. All of this recruiting, training, the failures in training, and not being able to actually activate some of these people that you've spent a lot of money helping to prepare. I think part of the challenge here is that people really look at this as a job opportunity versus a career building opportunity when they look at debt collection from the outside.
Right.
Those that get into it and start actively engaging realize quite quickly, oh, wait, this is actually, like, there's room for me to move. Like, this isn't a dead end job. Like, this is a real opportunity for me to build a life and to build my own personal career. And I feel like that gets lost in translation because they hear the words debt collection.
Right.
for whatever reason, well, I mean, we know the reason, but it's mostly media, but I think that's part of the challenge. We did have another question come through that I'm curious about. She said, I find any candidate who doesn't stay engaged during the process won't be successful and rescind the offer. So if you find someone is, if you made a job offer and you find someone's not staying engaged during the process, how long are you going to be willing to keep them around?
So when you say rescind the offer, so you mean before we hire them then?
I'm assuming it's like based on the question, my assumption is that you make an offer to somebody, and as you're going through that onboarding process, they're no longer, like, let's say, actively engaging in the process. Like they accept, like you made them an offer, they accepted.
Yeah, I mean, here in
and
New
now
York,
they're not onboarding.
well, here in New York State, if they show up one day at training, they're on the time clock, they're on payroll, they're getting paid, they're hired. So we have to then terminate their employment. So
Gotcha.
and we do that, absolutely. So if they're insubordinate, combative already, and some people don't, will right away vocalize that they don't like the way policy and procedure is here, and they'll say it right in the training room, and usually sometimes we're able to explain why it's necessary, and they'll accept that. And if they can't accept that and they continue down that path, then we have to cut them. So, but it is considered termination of employment here in New York. It's a layoff.
Okay.
It doesn't impact our unemployment insurance that much because they haven't been here long enough. So, not a big deal. So I think what your person asking a question is maybe during if we have multiple, sometimes we do 2 interviews, and so they'll get through the first one, on the mobile, and then come into the office, and they're horrible, for whatever reason. At that point we haven't made an offer, but then we just wouldn't make the offer at that point. But once the offer is made, if they show up, they're on the payroll, they're an actual employee, and at that point you have to terminate the employment. So
I don't know how you run a business in New York.
Offer rescission there, but I wish we could do that. I wish that they wouldn't. It would be like a week where they're not on the payroll, we can rescind the offer. I don't know, maybe in other states they allow that, but unfortunately not here in New York.
You guys should check out Florida. It's pretty nice down here.
I bet, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and I don't just mean my avoidance of snow in general. As we all know, I'm a tropical folk, and I don't do too well in the cold. But oh my God, guys, like I just realized that we are like at the end of our time. This has been a fantastic discussion, but as we wrap up our final couple of minutes here, anything else that you guys would share with our audience today for, any additional advice you can provide?
Sean, any closing comments there?
No, like I said, I just I really recommend taking advantage of the veterans in your areas and offering the referral programs. It's really worked out for Ryan and I, and I think that would be applicable to any state you're in.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, clearly this has been such an active discussion with the audience that we're clearly going to have to do some more on this topic. So I would encourage the audience to send me a message on LinkedIn, send me an email with your questions, and I will hopefully get these guys back at least one more time. But if you have any questions, comments, you can leave those in the comments here. We'll be resharing this on YouTube on Friday, so you can share this with your colleagues around the industry and let them learn a little bit from these gentlemen as well, because this has been a fantastic discussion. Clearly, we didn't even get through the entire deck, so I'm going to have to bring these guys back at least one more time to help me continue to create great content for a great industry. But gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for coming on, sharing your insights. This is kind of a difficult topic and something that I think a lot of organizations look at as part of their secret sauce. And I really appreciate you coming on and having this chat with me in a public setting.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam. We appreciate it as well.
And for those of you that are watching, we really appreciate your time and attention as well. This has been one of my favorite all-time webinars. So I hope that all of you continue to come back and ask great questions. I want to get you the information that you're looking for, and I want to continue to facilitate these discussions for the debt collection industry. But until next time, everybody, thank you so much for your time and attention today. We'll see you all again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.